Well, obviously, there's a lot of hype and excitement in the theme park realm as Epic Universe is opening on May 22nd, and that has a lot of people, including Disney fans, thinking or assuming that Disney World is soon to announce a fifth gate as a way to answer for Epic Universe. But is that something Disney actually needs to do in this increasingly competitive theme park market? It's an interesting topic, but it's one where I don't think Disney needs to add a fifth gate. And in this video, we're going to discuss why I don't think that's the case. And I'm not the only one that thinks this, as we're also going to go through an article that lays out a lot of the reasons as to why this more than likely won't happen in the next decade for sure. So that's what we're going to do in this video today. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And this article we're going to go through and discuss on this is from Disney Tourist Blog, and it says why a fifth theme park will not be built at Disney World in the next decade. It says fans are hopeful that Walt Disney World will build a fifth theme park given the billions of dollars the company plans to invest in an expansion in Florida. This makes the pessimistic prediction that a fifth gate won't come to Disney World anytime soon and shouldn't. Here's why it won't happen and what we'll get instead at Magic Kingdom and beyond and what's better for the fans. Disney and Universal are in the greatest boxing match they've ever been in at this point in time, and it's a slugfest, says Dennis Spiegel, owner and founder of consulting firm International Theme Park Services. I believe that within 12 to 16 months, Disney will announce its fifth theme park gate because it's necessary. Spiegel predicted this on his analysis of Epic Universe, which is too explicit of good as compared to all the other theme parks around the world. Is Epic Universe going to put Disney out of business? Absolutely not. Is it going to put a chink in their armor? Yes, it will, Spiegel says. He says, frankly, this is nonsense. No offense to this dude, but it's a dumb comment for an expert to make, and one that reeks of someone who knows that outlandish sound bites are the ones that will gain traction, so those are the ones to make. Yeah, I don't know anything about Dennis Spiegel, but to say within 12 to 16 months that Disney would announce a fifth gate is... I see no reasons as to why that would be the case. I mean, you can think that, but if you study Disney, if you look at what they're currently doing and what they're more than likely planning to do, I don't think, even if they were going to do a fifth gate or they were planning it, I don't think they would announce it within the next 12 to 16 months. I think that timeline is rather silly, as there's many, many things that can be done in the existing parks to bolster the things that they're doing and lots of changes they can make before you even start throwing in a fifth park into the whole mix here. And it could just be to grab headlines, but yeah, makes me wonder about the expertness of that claim, but I don't know. Just this week, Bob Iger warned of tariffs' impact on Disney's $60 billion expansion plans. While the executive's comments use Disney Cruise Line as an illustrative example, we are more concerned about plans being scaled back or delayed for Walt Disney World. Even with the reciprocal tariffs now partially paused, some have already been implemented. And regardless of the tariffs, there's a lot of economic uncertainty and travel trepidations as consumer confidence dips and fears of a recession rise. Against this backdrop, Disney usually pulls back on its investment plans as opposed to doubling down. On the other hand, Universal still seems to be moving full steam ahead. The company and UK government just announced Universal Studios Great Britain, and fresh rumors are swirling about the company's aggressive plans in Orlando after Epic Universe. Well, they're not really rumors. I mean, they came out and said in a video that they had plans, a slew of things they were going to bring to the existing parks and already plans for the Epic Universe expansion. So it's not really rumor. The rumor is what would go in, but the rumors are not what they're doing because Universal has said as much this is what they're going to do. And I do think they're going to continue to be very aggressive into the next decade, which again is going to force Disney to do more investment into their existing parks, I do think. Suffice to say that Mr. Spiegel's prediction that Disney will announce a fifth gate at Walt Disney World in the next 12 to 16 months is exceedingly unlikely to be accurate. I'll take it one step further. Disney will not announce a fifth gate at Walt Disney World in the next 12 to 16 years. I actually agree with that. As for the next 12 to 16 months, we already know that the announcement isn't happening because the company already unveiled what's essentially the 5-year plan for Walt Disney World back at D23 Expo last year. Parks Chairman Josh DeMauro emphasized that the time horizon for the D23 projects is not remote. Everything discussed will start to come to life over the next 5 years. This officially rules out a fifth gate in the next 5 years. Honestly, we think it goes further than that. It also more or less closes the door on a fifth gate in the next decade. First, because the nature of these projects reveals or rather reiterates the kind of expansion Walt Disney World wants. For the most part, all these projects are within the existing boundaries of the existing parks. They are expansions by virtue of increasing capacity and utilization, but that's about it. Only one of them meaningfully increases the footprint of the existing parks, and the reason for that, it's much more efficient and easier. If Walt Disney World is going this route with parks that are already built and, for example, replacing the Rivers of America rather than expanding beyond the berm to the south to the northwest of Magic Kingdom, what reason is there to believe they'll go the exact opposite direction and build a whole fifth park? There isn't. Again, I agree with that, which has been one of the criticisms of Disney is they actually don't expand their parks. They just replace things when they have the, you could say the luxury of space that they don't utilize because it's much more expensive to develop land as well. It's much cheaper to go in, take over an existing building. It's already set up for stuff. You can do it on the cheap there, but you're not really expanding the capacity of the park. You're just expanding potentially the draws of people to come in. And also the fact that what he's talking about is Villains Land is the one that's actually expanding, but you're not going to see that for sometime in 2030. If it even happens, because that is one where it's so far off in the distance. They got a new CEO supposedly coming in 2026. Like, do they stick to these budgets and timelines? Like, there's a lot of things that could happen between now and whenever construction on that would really start. That is one you could see get scrapped because Disney does also have a history of announcing projects, even filing permits for projects that don't end up happening. And I know that gives people hope about the Rivers of America. We'll wait and see. I'm not holding out hope that they're going to change course because Disney typically doesn't do that. I think it'd be good if they didn't. And they said we listened to the fan feedback, but I have a feeling that they're going to move forward with that because they've made way too much noise about it at this point to essentially, not do it. I think they would look at it as we would look foolish if we didn't follow through with this. Whereas I think it would actually show them listening to the fan base and willing to make, changes to plans based off, guest feedback and fan feedback. But I just don't think current Disney will do that. Second, because Walt Disney World announced a lot of projects for the next 5 years and they'll end up costing several billions of dollars. We already know the total amount the company plans to invest in Florida, and there's realistically not enough left over to build a fifth gate in the 2030s. It'll be more expansion just like the current 5-year plan that is quite clearly the blueprint and Disney's most effective means of deploying capital. There is no compelling business case for a fifth gate. It's all fan daydreaming. I agree. If you look at the things that they're currently building, that many lands and attractions, you could make a case that could make it'd be bare bones, especially compared to like Epic Universe, but you could almost talk about the cost there could go into a fifth gate. So if they were going to do a fifth gate, they wouldn't be spending that money on these attractions, like he said, because you're probably already talking well into the billions about these current things that they're building. And to build a new theme park, Epic Universe costs $6 to $8 billion. It probably would cost maybe more, and Disney doesn't tend to stick to budgets super well. So you're probably talking at least $8 billion for a new theme park. They already announced I think they're expanding Disney Cruise Line. They invested like $10 billion into that. So I don't see them investing $10 billion into the Disney Cruise Line, spending, let's just say, $2 to $3 to $4 billion on the current things they're building, and then also announcing a fifth gate. Unless they announce the fifth gate and they said we're going to build it sometime in the next 20 years, which I don't think they would do that because nobody would believe them. So that's yet another reason I don't think it'll happen. One of the reasons many fans have renewed hopes for Fifth Gate last year was the settlement of a lawsuit over the former Reedy Creek Improvement District. As a result, a joint development agreement has been reached between the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District and Walt Disney World. The development agreement commits the company to invest up to $17 billion from Walt Disney World over the next 10 to 20 years. Under the terms of the deal, Disney is required to invest at least $8 billion within the first 10 years of the agreement. Disney also agrees to fund at least $10 million in affordable housing projects and create a local business hiring program that would award at least 50% of all construction work to Florida-based businesses. One wrinkle about that agreement that has caught the attention of fans is that it authorizes a maximum of 5 major theme parks, which is one more than the current count. It also allows a maximum of 5 minor theme parks, like water parks and things like that, as well as nearly 1.3 million square feet of office space, 1.7 million square feet of restaurant and retail space, and over 53,000 hotel rooms. This has fans excited, but surely this language was included purposely because Walt Disney World has plans to build a fifth gate, right? Right? He says wrong. The agreement simply gives Disney the autonomy to build a fifth park, keeping its options open without having to revisit the development agreement. Seriously, don't read too much into this. It's like how the land on your home might be zoned or conditionally approved for a ADU, even if you have no plans of building one. True, and also in the former agreement, I do believe Disney had the right, if they wanted to, when it was Reedy Creek, that they could have built a nuclear power plant under that agreement, and they never did that. Like, there's things that you could do, essentially, like he was saying, frees you up to, like, if you do want to do some expansions, you don't have to go through this whole permit zoning process. It can already be there and you can get started quicker, but it doesn't mean you're going to do it. So I have heard people talk about that as a reason, but I agree. I don't think it's a giveaway that they're doing it. The dead giveaway of this should be the fact that the development agreement also authorizes Walt Disney World to build 3 minor theme parks, despite the company not even operating both of its existing water parks simultaneously. Well, they are now, but they haven't been previously, but they currently this year both are running. No one seriously believes Disney is going to build more water parks or other niche concepts, so why give your hopes up over a theoretical 5th gate that Disney has not once had an appetite to build? We already know what the company has plans to do in the coming decade, and none of it is a 5th gate. It's just strange reading an article, and I'm agreeing with most of the stuff he's saying in here. Another reason is because Iger and D'Amaro have specifically said they want to expand the existing parks. During the many interviews the two have given that discuss plans for the future and bullishness on parks, they talked about capacity expanding additions. There are also no shortage of quotes from Iger and D'Amaro about reimaginings and new lands at the existing Walt Disney World parks. There are 0 about 5th gates. Iger and D'Amaro are careful and deliberate when speaking publicly, choosing their words carefully. If there were plans for new theme parks, they'd say as much. Instead, they repeatedly have invoked Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge. I don't know why. I do not like that land. Toy Story Land and Pandora. Pandora, I think, is the best of the newer lands they built. That's a fantastic land. They should take that blueprint and apply it over to all the stuff they're doing. But the reason that land is great, by the way, in my opinion, you had Joe Rohde and you had James Cameron involved. You had very much very high caliber people, very meticulous, and James Cameron is notorious for wanting things his way, almost like J.K. Rowling's with the Wizarding World. It's almost like these things need somebody like that in charge of it and not just a cookie cutter template of using things. But I think that is the reason Pandora is as good as it is because of those people that were directly involved in creating it. They go on to say how the plans to expand its parks and invest in increasing capacity and opportunity within these existing footprints to optimize. Those words are pretty clear. If that's not enough for you, there are the concepts that have already been announced or teased. Walt Disney World has announced Tropical Americas and Animal Kingdom, Monstropolis in Hollywood Studios, Cars Land, as well as Villains Land and Magic Kingdom. All these are lands that redevelop existing areas of existing parks while increasing the usable guest space in the respective parks. There's really no need to speculate. D'Amaro and Iger have repeatedly and consistently shared the plan, and it is not for a 5th gate. Fans are also looking at the headline $60 billion or $17 billion number and doing some dreaming of their own. To be sure, those are colossal sums of money, taking just $17 billion, which is conceivably enough to do 5th, 6th, and 7th gates. There's theoretically enough for roughly 3 new Shanghai Disneylands. However, there's 0 chance of a 5th gate at Walt Disney World costing that little unless it were done in the spirit of the OG Walt Disney Studio Park in France, and trust me, no one actually wants that mess. For one thing, construction isn't as cheap in the United States as it is in China. Labor and material costs have skyrocketed, and Disney doesn't have a great track record of keeping costs in check. That is very true. Whether you're talking movies or theme parks, they do not keep budgets in check very well. A new Disney theme park in Florida would easily cost $8 billion, like I kind of what I was saying, unless it were an absolute bare bones half-day park, and that's before tariffs potentially, well, at least in my opinion, potentially have an impact on them. After them, I can't even begin to imagine the cost perhaps north of $10 billion. I don't know. I do not purport to be an expert to the degree which steel and other raw materials costs will increase. Nor do I. I'm not an economist. I'm just a guy on the internet talking in a spare room. On top of that, this is all of the CapEx at Walt Disney World over the course of a decade. Even Disney could build a new park for $67 billion. That would be a big chunk of that total and would necessitate CapEx reductions in the existing 4 parks as compared to the last decade. At first blush, the $17 billion seems like a ton of money, but it's actually only slightly above the last decade at Walt Disney World when adjusted for inflation. Well, and also of that money, not all of that is just for brand new things in the parks. A lot of it is going toward maintenance and other areas. To be sure, there were a ton of awesome additions over the last decade, and it would be great to get another 10 years of that, but 0 new parks. I'm not going to say awesome additions. Again, Pandora's great. Toy Story's okay. Galaxy's Edge, to me, is a massive swing and a miss. I think of all the things you could have done with a Star Wars land and what you ended up with, I think is very, very underwhelming. And a lot of times when I'm in there, it's not even that busy. And the fact, here, I'm not a small tangent here. The fact that there's no Star Wars music in Galaxy's Edge drives me nuts. One of the best things that they've done in Epic Universe, and really Universal does this very well, is in these lands, they play music from Harry Potter, from How to Train Your Dragon, from Nintendo. You have the music playing in the park when you're in the land. And music is such a big thing for movies and setting the mood and things like that. And the fact that you walk through Galaxy's Edge and there's nothing, it's so strange to me to this day that they don't include some of the Star Wars music. I don't understand it. Building a fifth theme park at Walt Disney World would mean that the Tropical Americas, Cars Land, and Villains Land projects, what they've already said are happening, wouldn't be able to happen. So rest assured, they are happening, along with a few other major unannounced projects that'll cost at least a few $100 million a pop. Still, many Walt Disney World fans think a fifth gate must happen for one simple reason, as an answer to Universal's Epic Universe. Many fans believe Walt Disney World needs to have a response to Epic Universe, and the only thing that can really compete with a new theme park is a new theme park. Assuming for the sake of argument that Walt Disney World had built a fifth gate and it also opened in 2025, at least when it comes to a theme park fans or people wanting to do the hot new thing, Epic Universe and that fictional Disney fifth gate aren't going to compete with one another. They'd both cannibalize attendance from the existing parks. Like I said earlier, I think it would completely cannibalize Animal Kingdom, undoubtedly. Walt Disney World will only ever build another theme park if it won't pull away from its existing gates. You may also hate to hear this, but Walt Disney World is not going to build another park to reduce crowds or attendance in its current parks. There's no scenario where they're going to spend billions of dollars to tread water. That doesn't make any sense. Agreed. Walt Disney World will only build another park if it can increase per guest spending via vacation during and at least 8 million new visits to Walt Disney World's cumulative total in its first year. That would be a difficult feat. The average American's vacation is between 4 to 6 days long, and that average has been on the decline the last couple of decades, with Americans having a record number of vacation days on the table. Well, also, you have to take into account the competition from Universal. They are going to draw, especially with Epic Universe and the things that they're going to continue to do, they are going to draw people over to them, and people only have so many vacation days. So if they're already looking more at Universal and thinking, oh, let's include this in our trip, and maybe, like I said many times in other videos, doesn't mean they won't go to Disney, but they may not go to Disney as many days as before. So previously, many people may have gone to Disney for a whole week, and now they're going to Universal for 2-3 days, and then going to Universal or going to Disney for, 2-3 days maybe. Maybe they split down the middle. Maybe it's majority Universal, minority of it Disney. Maybe it's vice versa. But whichever way you slice that, a fifth gate doesn't make any sense in that equation. Because then you would just be talking, most people, if they're going to Epic Universe and Universal and they go over to Disney, they would go to the newest park and probably Magic Kingdom, and then the other parks would be left out. So that's another way, not only the stuff going on with Disney, but also the competition, understanding how the guest is going to visit these parks does play into this equation. Anecdotally, we've also heard from many travel agent friends that the most common answer from clients to rising costs at Walt Disney World is decreasing their length of stay. Rather than doing a full week or 6 days, they're doing 4 to 5 and avoiding weekends. That's actually indirect data to support this. Look no further than the slowdown on Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, I can tell you from speaking with our travel agent sponsor, that's what a lot of people have been doing. When you throw Universal and Epic Universe into that mix, it's not like they're going to extend their vacation days. They're just still going to have, maybe it is 4 to 5 days, and they're going to split a trip amongst Disney and Universal on those trips. They're not, more than likely, they're not going to have the budget to just add 2 extra days to check out both for the full length, which, again, I think goes to his point, which I do agree with. With the duration of the average American vacation on the decline, adding more gates is a tough sell. After factoring in travel days, many Americans already don't have enough time to experience all 4 parks plus Disney Springs or water parks plus whatever Universal parks might siphon away. I'm going to say will siphon away, and it's not just time, it's money. As, again, Disney's not cheap, Universal's not cheap. They have, obviously Disney's running a lot of discounts this summer, but Universal has a lot of things that they do offer. Like their hotels, for the most part, are pretty moderately priced, but, it's not a cheap vacation destination at either place. So not only not having a ton of time, but just the budgets of this. People don't have unlimited budgets, especially right now, to just go to a full vacations at both parks. Or even just one park. Maybe, you're talking Disney, as much as prices have risen. People don't have the money to just go for a full week at Disney right now in many cases. It's easier to get more people to come to the current parks than to take the current demographic and have them add another day. Then there are the logical impediments or reasons why building a new theme park would be less desirable than expanding existing gates. Staffing shortages have been a hot topic for the last couple of years, and although they're largely resolved in the parks, it's still not perfect. It's a tight labor market with nearly 2 job openings for every unemployed person. The root causes of this are beyond the scope of this post, but the bottom line is that it's unlikely to change in the Central Florida hospitality industry. When it comes to growing theme park attendance, the easier and more cost-effective solution is the one we've been seeing over the last several years, expanding the existing parks. I don't know if expanding is the right word. Some of it has been expanding to some degree, but a lot of this has been replacing things that were there with new things, but I digress. Walt Disney World has already built out the capacity of its existing gates with attractions like Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Tron Light Cycle Power Run, and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. This approach of expanding the footprint of existing parks or replacing underutilized attractions is advantageous from Disney's perspective because it keeps infrastructure costs lower. It also doesn't require gambling on a big, new, untried concept and having to throw more money at that in the future to boost its popularity. So I think when you're talking theme parks and Disney, it's like you have the business end of things, which that makes sense from a business standpoint. But from the creative standpoint, it just seems like they don't have the creativity they used to. I think back in the day, they would have taken more chances on things, but everything has to be an IP nowadays. It seems like everything is just like this cookie cutter approach to whatever things they are expanding into. I think the biggest one that I would say is a risk, but it has the most potential return would be Villains Land. That one it's IP based, but it's also going to require some creativity on how you utilize those. And I think people would like to see more of that type of risk taking and not just everything having to be an IP and some originality. But from a business standpoint, which is how Disney's going to run this stuff, they're just going to look at it like he's saying from a purely number standpoint for the most part when they're looking at either expanding the parks or trying to expand their capacity. But I think it will take place within the existing parks and not a fifth gate. With a new park comes new toll plazas, ticket booths, turnstiles, backstage facilities, roads, transportation hubs, and other infrastructure that already exist in support of the existing theme parks. These infrastructure expenses are not insignificant, and it's difficult to justify their expenditures when the existing parks can be built out without incurring all of these same costs. Well, and not to mention, we talked many times before about the maintenance at Disney that has already been falling off. Like if you add another park into that mix, I mean, how bad is maintenance going to be if they can't even maintain their current parks? And I think that is a big part of this is maybe people don't want to realize it, but it is the infrastructure costs, the things to maintain these things. I mean, in my opinion, they've fallen way behind on that stuff. And so if a brand new theme park throwing that into the mix would already stress a department of things, you could say, in the company that is already struggling. Simply put, expanding the existing parks is the conservative, cost-effective, and low-risk approach. It costs less for the company, and that means less expense to be passed on to consumers. And undoubtedly, one of the biggest reasons I've said people don't want a fifth gate is because if you think Disney's expensive now, it would just become even more expensive. I mean, I think ticket prices would go up 20%, if not more. I mean, you would see it's already been accelerated how much Disney costs now and all the things that they've, charged for now that they didn't used to before. You would see that accelerate even quicker with a fifth gate. This brings us to the point that Walt Disney World should not build a fifth gate. Here we're switching gears from what will likely happen to what should happen. He says, frankly, Walt Disney World has no business thinking about another brand new theme park anytime soon. I know this is going to get me some hate, but hear me out. I completely agree. It'll probably, I don't know, people may disagree with me as well, but I think I think all the reasons that have been laid out make a ton of sense. Fans love the idea of a fifth theme park because it's a blank slate capable of holding a long wish list of rides and lands. Instead of getting 1 to 2 rides here and there, we get half a dozen new lands, and I get it. A brand new theme park is sexy and exciting, and it's fun to daydream about Florida Disney Sea or whatever might be in your perfect park. Says, don't get me wrong, I would love to relive the feeling of setting foot in a brand new park that's totally unfamiliar. That is a very cool thing about Epic Universe. I'm not going to lie. Having a brand new thing to explore and check out is very fun. There's nothing like that. Expansions absolutely do not compare. But I'm also a realist. It's fun to dream, but the practical reality of a new theme park in the late 2020s or early 2030s would not be perfect or meet what you're imagining. At best, it would open incomplete. That is very likely. I mean, look at MGM Studios when it opened. That was a very incomplete theme park when that thing opened. Building Shanghai Disneyland as it exists today in Florida, USA in the year 2030 would cost at least $12 billion once all is said and done, maybe more. When Tokyo Disney Sea, say goodbye to the entirety of the $17 billion. As exciting as that would be, and it would be very exciting, it's difficult to advocate for it when Animal Kingdom is still a half-day park for most guests in need of 2 to 3 more rides. I absolutely agree. When Disney's Hollywood Studios needs more all-ages attractions so that its headliners don't average 60-plus minute waits. Also agree. When Epcot even post-overhaul needs another new World Showcase Pavilion and reimaginings for a few rides at the front of the park. Also agree. And the overhaul was underwhelming on that front also. And those are just the things that are really should be done at the existing parks. That list did not include expansion in Magic Kingdom, not because I think it's a bad idea. I do with the Rivers of America. It's a terrible idea. But because Magic Kingdom needs the least help. That I agree with completely. He says it's going to happen regardless. There are a ton of discretionary projects that could happen at the existing gates to really improve them, and Villains Land is one of them. Outside of the Dino Land plot, there's a ton of unused and underutilized space in Animal Kingdom. That park has already got great bones. How about a couple of all-new, not replacement lands that turned it into 1.5-day park? There's endless potential at Epcot. Backstage facilities could be relocated at Disney's Hollywood Studios, allowing for the smallest park to become larger and have an easier way to navigate layout. Imagineering is plenty capable of dreaming up tens of billions of dollars of fantastic ideas for the existing 4 parks at Walt Disney World. I think traditionally, Imagineering is, I do wonder about Imagineering if it's a lack of imagination or talent in Imagineering, or how much, and I kind of think this is the case, how much is it the corporate C-suite overriding and basically just saying, hey, here's what we're doing, you fill in the blanks. Like, it's hard to know, but it does seem that there has been a definite fall off in Imagineering when it comes to quality, when it comes to really inventiveness and imagination. But I do think a lot of that is the corporate structure of how they're set up. And I do think there's way more corporate oversight in their hands-on projects than there used to be. And I think that does fall into this. And I've talked to people in Imagineering. I think they have really good ideas, but I think a lot of times those ideas fall on deaf ears. And it still leads to whatever the end result of attractions and lands are. But it is something that I think people have concern about, because are they capable of doing the things they used to do, or even competing with what Epic Universe and Universal Studios is doing? I think it's a valid question. And I'm not pointing all my ire at Imagineering as much as I am the company itself and whatever that setup is on how Imagineering currently, how they develop ideas, how they go about stuff, and if they're actually left to be able to just be really imaginative like they used to be. For me, the answer is easy. I'll take a maximization of the investment and have that money allocated towards expanding the existing parks and reimagining rides that are currently underutilized or outdated. I know that's not the exciting choice and might be an unpopular opinion, but the alternative is the current 4 gates stagnating for at least a full decade, and that's assuming a new gate would be properly built out in the first place. It wouldn't require another decade to fix or expand. That is exactly what I think. I think if they built a 5th gate, I don't think it would be on the level of Epic Universe. I think it would be much more closer to how MGM Studios opened, or Animal Kingdom, where it's going to need a lot more things to fill it out. And that's not going to help the current situation when you're talking about park capacity. And again, it would just cannibalize the attendance they have in the other parks. I mean, yeah. As a Disney fan, I've lived through decades of stagnation, and I don't really want to repeat any of that. From my perspective, the last decade was far, far better. I think they added more things because of what Universal was doing. Obviously, the Wizarding Worlds came online, and that threw Disney a bit for a loop, and they were, answering that with Galaxy's Edge and Pandora and Toy Story Land, and obviously some of the things that they're, looking to add now. I think it's one thing you say the experiences are there, but I think other aspects of Disney are not anywhere near as good as they were a decade ago. So, like, if you are a fan of the new expansions they've done, I think you can make a pretty good argument that the overall park operations have not gotten better in many ways. But I think just talking, just about the sheer amount of things added, you could, I understand perhaps from that perspective. But again, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the stuff necessarily that they've added. Sure, I think everything took far too long, and a decent amount of money was poorly allocated at Epcot. Yeah, that goes without saying very much. But at least part of that can be blamed on the pandemic, and hopefully that won't happen again. I know this gets blamed on the pandemic. I think, obviously, that played a part of it. But I do think them going so heavy on Disney Plus and having the losses they had on the movie side for a period of time definitely played a role into how long this stuff took. And again, when you look at what Universal was doing with Epic Universe, they paused for a period of time when the pandemic at first, but they continued construction, and actually their budget increased in many ways for Epic Universe. So you don't see the budget cuts when you look at that park. And I've been to that park, and I don't see anything where budgets were cut, corners were cut, anything like that. So Again, I think this is why competition is good, because as you're going to see, perhaps they already talked about earlier in the article about how Iger's already sort of indicating that the tariffs could delay some things and it could have an impact on the current construction. If Universal is not slowed down by any of this stuff and they continue to go, even if Disney has legitimate reasons, perhaps they are going to wait some of these things out or change some of this stuff up, it's going to be a rough comparison when you look at what Universal is doing and how aggressive I do think they're going to be in the next decade. That's going to be compared upon as well. And not to mention the things that they are going to build. And obviously I don't think they're going to do a fifth gate, but the things they're going to build are going to be directly compared to Epic Universe and all of those things. So all these things they are building need to be absolute home runs, because it's going to be immediately compared to what has recently been built here. And if it's not up to that level, it's going to be very obvious, and people are going to start pointing that stuff out. If leadership coalesces around a clear vision for Walt Disney World's 10-year plan, the fruits of that in the existing 4 parks could be fantastic. It could be, but the other thing you have to think about as well, like I mentioned before, there's presumably going to be a new CEO come to the mix. How much of the stuff that was laid out most recently, is the new CEO going to come in and stick to all of that? Or is that going to be changed? If things take a turn economically, that not in a good way, does Villains Land still get done? As that's going to presumably be billions of dollars to do that land. So a lot of this stuff is not as set in stone as I think some people think it is. And again, Disney has a history of, even when they have permits filed, a lot of this stuff doesn't happen. I think at one point permits were filed for Mary Poppins in Epcot and the Play Pavilion and some of these other things that didn't end up happening. So just because we're seeing permits being filed and trailers being set up for things doesn't necessarily mean it is for sure going to go ahead. Now, I think a lot of this will, because Disney has made too much noise about it and they've talked about it too much, and to not do it at this point would be a really bad look. So I think most of this is going to go through, including the Rivers of America. I think they're going to go through with that, removing that. So that is one wrinkle thrown into all of this, is not only the unknown economic situations of tariffs and just the overall economy, but also the leadership. That is going to seemingly change in the next, year to 2 years. And what does that look like going forward? I mean, overall, I agree with his sentiment in the article that there's a lot of valid reasons as to why Disney won't be doing a fifth gate. And again, I don't know who Dennis Spiegel is, but being an expert in saying that Disney is going to announce a fifth gate in the next 12 to 16 months, I remember doing a video on it. It's like, I don't understand at all why you would think that, because they've already committed as much money as they're going to commit. That does not include a fifth gate. The only thing they could feasibly do, in my opinion, would be to announce the intentions to do a fifth gate. That would be later in the future, but I think Disney would get lambasted if they came out and said, we're going to do a fifth gate and it's going to open in 2040 or something. Because Disney already kind of has this history of overpromising and under-delivering on things, and something that far off into the future, nobody would believe it would happen anyways. And just economically, not only just economically, just from an operation standpoint, the way things are with just the market share and the competitiveness in the theme parks now, a fifth gate doesn't make any sense. And again, the existing parks need flushing out. They also need a lot more upkeep. There's a lot of things, and to their credit, Disney seemingly is going in and fixing some of these things recently, which I think is good. But you do have a lot of areas where the upkeep needs to improve, and the maintenance has been an issue for years now. And I don't see, until they get that figured out, it's not going to improve by adding another park that's already going to stress a department that's already underfunded, understaffed, whatever the issues are with that. In this new paradigm, I guess you could say, of what it looks like in theme parks in Orlando, you can't really talk about any of this without also talking about the competition, what Universal is doing and has been doing. The last decade, they ate into market share. They're opening up a brand new theme park that is going to have an impact in the theme park market in Orlando, and more than likely, it is going to hit Disney on some level. Now, what to level that is going to hit them, unknown at this point. But even Disney's indicating as much, and all the discounts and deals that they're running also indicate that they're trying to lure people over off discounts and doing more perks and things. But when you have your biggest competitor with a brand new theme park, they're already looking to add more days to a trip. So let's say people are already looking 2 to 3 days over there. And like I mentioned before in the article, people are not just going to add on another 4 to 5 days if they built a fifth gate to include all the Disney parks. They would pick and choose like they're most likely going to do this summer. And so will they eventually build a fifth gate? I think they will eventually, but also I don't know what you would fill it out with at this point. I know people look at the Disney Sea. I think that would be great in theory, but I don't see them doing a lot of the things that are in the Disney Sea. But maybe they presumably could. But I think it is more than likely what he said. I don't think you see it this decade. I kind of may not even see it for the next 20 years. A lot of this is just going to depend on how does Disney respond with Epic Universe? How does the next, the new CEO come in? What is their vision? How's the next 10 years look for Disney? And they have a lot of issues that they haven't had before. A lot of the brand sentiment is not as strong as it used to be. And when you're talking about kids in general, like a lot of kids grew up on Disney in the 90s. And that is not the case nowadays. And Disney does not have a grip on the youth like they used to. They don't have the nostalgic, endless stream of hit movies constantly. They do have movies that are hits. I'm not saying they don't, but it's not this, where you had Little Mermaid and Lion King and Toy Story. Like you just had banger after banger coming out. Like there are still some coming out, but a lot of those don't even have representation in the theme parks at this point. And so without having that on there, then you have to think about the longevity of, is this going to be the same type of Disney that has been going forward? And I think it's a lot to do with not only the economic reasons you can bring up that were brought up in this article and all these things, but also just the brand overall and the trajectory of where things are looking on top. And that's before you even mentioned the competition. Disney hasn't had this much competition in the theme park realm ever. I mean, Universal was always a second fiddle, and I'm not saying that they're on the same size or the same market share as Disney, but they clearly have been making an impact, and they are going to continue to be aggressive and continue to grow. So in that scenario, does it ever make sense for a fifth gate? I'm not saying it doesn't, but I don't think it does right now. And I just don't think, even if they wanted to, I don't think they would put forth the money to do it. And you got to think on the just the money side. In the last decade, they've spent $4 billion on Star Wars, $4 billion on getting Marvel. They spent 70 some odd billion dollars buying Fox. They're paying another anywhere from 10 to 19, I think, billion dollars to Comcast, who owns Universal, for the rest of Hulu. So they've had a lot of money expenditures on acquisitions, not to mention how much money has been lost on Disney Plus overall, which is, I think that's still some 12 to 13 billion dollars in the whole overall. So those are outside the theme parks, which is one reason why I think the theme parks have been trying to squeeze people for more money, is because the other areas of Disney have not been doing as well. But there's not as much consistency on the movie side either. Marvel MCU has fallen off quite a bit. Those are not a given that they're going to make a bunch of money like they used to. So the theme parks are the most constant, successful thing that they really have, and there's weakness in those as well, from not only competition and the market dynamics, but a lot of things Disney has done themselves. The price increases, the perks going away, the changes in the parks that people pointed to. So it's not as strong as it was a decade ago, in my opinion, and I think you could have made a better case 10 years ago for a fifth gate than you could right now. And you have to think too, are 5 parks something that is actually a thing that's needed? It may not be. If Universal continues to grow and Disney, is still going to be a big player regardless, even if you believe that Universal eventually overtakes Disney. So I'm not saying that they will, but I'm saying if you are one of these people, that would be years down the line. If Universal continues to compete more in the market and they get closer with Disney, does it even make sense at that point to have a fifth gate? If you're already sharing an audience with each other, which they are, I don't know if a fifth gate makes any sense ever, versus just expanding, not just replacing things, expanding things in the existing parks with the space that you do have to add more attractions and add more capacity to your parks, expanding your current offerings, bringing back perks, like doing a lot of things that add more value to a Disney vacation. I think that especially the short term, the next 10 to 20 years, makes far more sense than trying to do a fifth gate. That's just my opinion. I'm sure some people will disagree. That's perfectly fine. Leave your comments below. Let us know. But that's going to be it, though, for this video. But if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And again, let us know in the comments. Do you think Disney will build a fifth gate in the next 10 to 20 years? Or do you think they'd be better off not going that route? And until next time, we will see you in the parks. I think that's the biggest thing about what Epic Universe is going to do is Disney, without being pushed, I think they would bring new things to the parks, but I don't think you would have the sheer amount of things that have come in the past decade if it wasn't for the things Universal's been doing. So it has pushed them to spend more money in the parks, where otherwise they probably wouldn't have done that. So for one, I think that also goes into a reason they probably wouldn't do a fifth gate is because they're still needing to expand the existing parks. And, you throw one other into the mix. Animal Kingdom's already been struggling with attendance. That would already, that would just make that even worse, as people more than likely are not going to choose to go to Disney's 5 parks. They may start splitting time between Universal and Disney. So adding another park into that mix would be a risky, proposition in this period of time. And basically would cannibalize more than likely like Animal Kingdom and some of your other existing parks would be harmed by a new park, essentially, at least in my opinion.